Good evening, everyone. We will call this work session to order. Al, start us off with roll call, please.
Benson.
Bridget, you're muted.
Interesting, it showed it was off. Sorry. Benson here.
Benson is present. Brunig.
Brunig here.
Brunig is present. Sarda.
Sarda here.
Sarda is present. Mybom.
Mybom present.
Mybom is present. Minor. Did we hear? Is Minor once again?
She may be coming late, Al, she said.
Okay. Mosier.
Mosier here.
Mosier is present. Schramm.
Schramm here.
Schramm is present. Weber.
Weber is here.
Weber is present. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson's here.
Mayor Johnson is present. City Manager Leon.
Leon is here.
City Manager Leon is present. City Attorney Denherter.
Denherter is here.
City Attorney Denherter is present.
Now's the time for public appearances, so if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission about something not on this work session agenda, please step forward. Or Brad, are there any YouTube comments?
There are no comments on YouTube at this time.
Thank you. Then I will turn it over to the city manager and the city attorney to talk about our overflow jail agreement with Bonhomme County.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission. We did meet today with representatives from the Yankton County Sheriff's Department, the jail, as well as the state's attorney, as well as with our judges. We had city staff represented as well. What we want to talk through with you today primarily is an agreement between the city of Yankton and Bonhomme County to accept folks when Yankton County Jail is full, or if they're unable to due to a health-related reason during the pandemic or otherwise. So I'm going to let Ross step you through the agreement. I know some of you are having a hard time signing onto OneDrive. We did email you the updated agreement because Ross made some changes today after talking with the judge. And I'm also going to have him update you on some of our discussions with her today, and then break that down so we can understand what that means for our officers. But just for the public's benefit, I want to kind of rewind a little bit to March when the pandemic started. Everyone was scrambling for protective equipment, scrambling for protocol, not really certain what that we should do, how we were going to keep not only folks that are offenders safe and healthy as possible, but also our jailers, our jail staff, our correctional officers, all those folks, and our law enforcement officers. So we had a lot of concern, and the jail at that time put together some protocol for offenders and how we treat those. Over the course of the spring months, we identified some issues with how that was going, and we did bring those up to the judge, and she administered an order that you'll hear Ross talk about. And it did clarify some things, but we still had some challenges over the course of the summer. And our officers communicated that with us and told us, look, we understand that there's some constraints related to COVID, and we want to keep folks as healthy as possible too. We just are going to have a really hard time doing our jobs the way we'd like to do them, and keeping the community, they felt, safe without getting some of these folks at least out of the situation. So Ross will describe that a little bit as well. I think in combination with what we learned today and a new order that should be coming out maybe tomorrow or the following day from the judge, as well as with the consideration of this agreement, if you all pass this evening and then Bonhomme County passes it later next week, I think we're in a good position to move forward with our county jail and with Bonhomme County Jail if necessary. So Ross, if you want to kind of start going through the agreement and then talk a little bit about what's being updated. John Harris and Todd Brandt are here as well to talk about any questions or help you understand in the field how it impacts us, because I think that's an important piece that we need to understand.
Thank you, City Manager. Can you guys all hear me okay? First, I'm going to connect the dots from a jurisdictional perspective for you. The jail is operated by the Yankton County Sheriff's Department through policies that are adopted by the Yankton County Commission. Under that framework, state law basically does not allow the city any authority to tell the jail how to do its business. If the jail has policies or actually has capacity issues where they determine that the jail is crowded or unsafe, the judge has the authority by law to order that inmates or prisoners be taken to another jail, potentially in another county or another city, to be housed and maintained for Yankton County. But that can only be done pursuant to a written agreement between the parties that need to have their inmates held. So the judge is happy to send our Yankton County prisoners to a different location, but only if we have an agreement in place with the body operating that other jail. So that's where this overflow jail agreement comes in. The purpose of this agreement is to give us a place to go if the jail says they can't take our individuals. So this agreement is based upon the agreement that currently exists between Hutchinson County, that doesn't have a jail, and Davidson County, which houses the large share of the Hutchinson County prisoners. Under the terms of this agreement, consistent with the law, there is a fee of $70 per prisoner day, or any part thereof, for our inmates to be taken there. So even if an individual is brought in to be booked, and they are immediately released on an unsecured bond, meaning they don't have to post any money to bond out, that would be maybe an hour's worth of prisoner day, and therefore it would cost $70. That fee was determined through a statutory scheme that's designed to account for the cost of building depreciation, the cost of maintaining and keeping the prisoner, cost of administration, and what they say is a reasonable charge for obsolescence of the facility and all other tangible and intangible costs. But the fact remains, it's $70 per day if the person is there during a given day of the week. So the silver lining in all of this is, pursuant to state law, that fee or that cost should be covered by Yankton County. And that's logical when you look at the statutory scheme. The county is responsible for maintaining a jail, and if they can't because it's overcrowded or unsafe, the county is responsible for housing those prisoners someplace else. However, because the city is entering into this agreement, in order to make sure everybody feels warm and fuzzy about this, particularly Bonham County, there is language in here that says, if the circuit court in and for Yankton County enters judgment ruling that Yankton County is not liable for any portion of such expenses, the contracting city, Yankton, agrees to pay Bonham County the unpaid portion of such expenses. So if there was somehow a misinterpretation on our part in how the law applies here, if the judge was convinced that's not the way it's supposed to work, even though the statutes are pretty clear on this issue, Bonham is not going to be left hanging on this. We will cover those costs. I see the likelihood of that being extremely low, but that is the risk inherent with this particular arrangement. We are liable as the backup, sort of a recourse guarantor, if you will, if you're looking for a banking term. But we are on the hook if Yankton County won't pay based on court order. Anytime an inmate from the city of Yankton is brought from Yankton County to the Bonham County Jail, there is a voucher process that's to be completed, letting us and Yankton County know how much that prisoner is costing, so that we're aware of what's taking place here. We are agreeing to provide any and all reasonable assistance to Bonham County to obtain payment and collection of the sum due from Yankton County. So we will assist them in their collection efforts, whatever that may be. if we have prisoners that are taken to Bonham County does have the right, pursuant to their own policies and procedures, not to accept our prisoners. So this doesn't force them to take the people that Yankton County won't. The idea is this is a backup location. Bear in mind, Bonham County doesn't run a 100-individual jail facility like Yankton County does. Their maximum capacity right now is like 6 inmates, and when they're done with some renovations taking place soon, I think they'll be able to have capacity up to about 13 to 15 or something like that. So it's not a large facility. They, in August, had a COVID-positive staff member, and in fact had to close the jail for 2 weeks. So this is only practical to the extent that they have beds available. It's just important that we have some place to go. We have evidence provided by the police department that there's been at least a couple different occurrences in the last few months where the jail refused individuals because the jail was deemed to be full based on their modified capacity. So that would be the perfect time to use an agreement like this. It's an alternative location for that one-off individual that the jail won't take that they should be taking. In the meeting today with the clerk of courts, we added a number of provisions that the clerk wanted to see to govern sharing of information at the time of booking when the city of Yankton delivers a prisoner to Bonham County. Not every county operates its booking procedures the same way. As a reminder, booking is the process by which a prisoner is essentially booked into the computer system for a given jail facility, and then that information is shared and a court file is started in the appropriate county. So it works seamlessly in the county where the jail is located. So if you take an individual who's arrested in the city to the Yankton County Jail, there's already a seamless system to have the individual booked in Yankton County, and that system is attached to the Yankton County Clerk of Courts, and it all jives. But when we take somebody from the city of Yankton and bring them to the Bonham County Jail, Bonham County's jail isn't tied into the Yankton County Clerk of Courts in the same way. So the judge in our meeting today expressed some concerns about the sharing of information. So this paragraph titled Roman numeral number 6 and its various subparts is designed to address those procedures. In consultation with the clerk of courts and then the judge, these procedures are deemed acceptable for that purpose. So Roman numeral 6 and all of its subparts are essentially the steps that the officer and the Bonham County jail staff will follow when they're going through a standard booking so that the court gets all the right information. Per state statute, there is an obligation by Bonham County to release a prisoner to the Yankton County Jail within 48 hours of a request. That also makes sense because Yankton County is paying to house an individual in the Bonham County Jail. If space opens up at the Yankton County Jail and Yankton wants that bed filled so they're not paying Bonham County has to deliver that individual back to Yankton County. That's based on statute. The cost incurred by Bonham County for transporting contracting cities' prisoners, our prisoners, to local medical facilities will be billed and collected in accordance with applicable law in paragraph 3. There are statutes on the books that talk about the medical bills associated with people who are prisoners. Essentially, state law says whatever those bills are, if they're in the jail covers those fees. So a brief period in time where bad guys basically have free health insurance. It's when they're in jail. So under statute, that's a cost shifting to the county again. If we take somebody to Bonham County, Yankton County is responsible for those medical fees. Now there's another piece of that risk. If the court were to rule that an individual who maybe had a heart attack and then open heart surgery when they're at the Bonham County Jail, the jail is now responsible for this massive medical bill. If Yankton County doesn't pay that, there's potentially a risk that the city of Yankton might be essentially a recourse guarantor. If the judge rules Bonham County's, or Yankton County is not responsible, the city of Yankton might be on the hook for that. So that's another minor risk associated with this. I mean, the likelihood of that happening is very low, but you guys should be aware that that risk is out there. If Bonham County does have to transport Yankton's prisoners to other facilities, there is a fee of $25 per hour for their staff to haul those individuals around. Again, that in theory would be paid by Yankton County, but recourse would be the city. Based on statute, Bonham County has to operate their jail in accordance with procedures. Those rules and procedures will be made available to the Yankton Police Department and to all prisoners that come in. That's required by statute. And then Roman numerals 12, 13, and 12 and 13 require certain documents to be provided to the jail when Yankton prisoners are delivered to Bonham County. And if we ever have any issues with this agreement, it can be terminated by either Bonham County or the city of Yankton upon 30 days notice. So we're not tied to this forever. If we experience pain associated with this, we can also kill it. So there's no long-term risk. It's just while the agreement is operating, there's a minor possibility we could get stuck with some fees for inmates if Yankton County is ruled by the court not to be responsible. So that's in essence the agreement. If this body were to adopt this agreement, there is no obligation that it ever be used, and the only one who can effectively use this agreement is the judge. Does that make sense? We are providing a framework by which the judge can order City of Yankton prisoners be transported to Bonham County. So this is a piece of the puzzle that we need to solve our jail availability issue. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is important to have that here as a backup, especially in light of COVID, which we expect is only going to get worse and will be around for quite some time. Getting back to the meeting that we had today, a bit of background on the problem generally. In the court's most recent order entered on July 2nd, I think, the court ruled that prisoners who are arrested for felonies, they would be booked into the jail, and the jail would release anybody that had been arrested for what we call a class 4, 5, or 6 felony. Those would be the lesser felonies. It's still a felony level crime, but it's your lesser felonies. Anything that's a class 3 or higher or 3 or worse felony, those individuals would be held with a cash bond or no bond as established by a judge. The problem that left our officers with over the summer months in particular was what to do with those individuals who weren't committing felonies but still for various reasons needed to be removed from a situation, essentially needed to be arrested. For instance, if you had an individual that was committing a number of lesser misdemeanors and it wasn't appropriate to just give them a ticket after the 3rd or 4th time that you were visiting a particular situation, or an individual who is one that just continues to stand out in my mind because it's sort of shocking, a naked individual who's hallucinating on some illegal drug. You can't just leave that person in public. You have to get them off the street. But we didn't have the tool because the jail was not booking these individuals into jail. There's nothing we could do other than give those individuals a ticket and say, make sure you show up on Wednesday to get booked when you have your initial appearance in front of the judge. It just wasn't working very well. We asked the officers in the YPD to provide the sergeants and the chief with good examples of the problems they've been having. And it's been bad enough that it's been affecting morale within the department. Some of those anecdotes have already been shared with the commission via email. Shocking to say the least. So on Thursday or Friday of last week, in anticipation of this meeting tonight, we invited the sheriff to have a sit-down with us to go over what we're doing with Bonham County, give him a heads up. The sheriff wanted the judge to participate in that meeting because the judge had this temporary order for dealing with COVID-19. So a meeting was called to be held involving the judges earlier this morning. And for purposes of that meeting, I provided the judge with those anecdotal stories from the police department, as well as a copy of this agreement and the memo that I wrote for this commission. And the judge came into the meeting this morning fully aware of the problems that we've been having. And I think that was extremely productive because at the conclusion of that meeting, she decided, yeah, what we're doing isn't working. We need to make sure that any misdemeanor arrest needs to be booked to the jail. If you're arrested, you get booked. And those go through the jail then, and once the individual is being booked, if a no cash bond or an unsecured bond is ordered, then it's the jail letting those individuals go. And if an officer believes that that's not an appropriate bond situation, if there's something special about it, or if we believe a person is a particular flight risk or whatever the circumstances might be, the judge is going to modify the order to again reflect that officers, even in the misdemeanor context, can contact the judge and the judge can modify bond accordingly, even for a misdemeanor. So we now should have the ability to arrest anybody that really needs it, even though we'll continue to be judicious in terms of who our officers arrest. But they can now be arrested, taken to jail, and the jail will release people based on bond set by the court. So I think today was an excellent day. The follow-up conversation I had with the judge after that particular meeting, the judge tacitly blessed the idea of the agreement with Bonham County. She understands that she needs a place to send people if the jail is not willing or able to accept people, or if the jail in fact closes. In fact, the comment she made is, I'm going to send an email to all the county sheriffs within the First Circuit and ask them all to enter into similar agreements with each other. So if somebody's arrested, it doesn't matter where, I can send them anywhere I need to be able to send them. So it'd be great if she gets to that point, but we're giving her a place to start. So that's the sum total, I think. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I just want to say thank you, Ross, and Chief Harris and Commander Brandt and all those involved, because you're finding a solution to a problem, and I think it's going to be it's really nice for Yankton potentially to be recognized with the other counties that this is something we're spearheading to get going. So I know Hutchinson County's been doing it, but in our district anyway. So thank you for all the work you guys have done on this.
So Ross, it's unfortunate that our officers have had to deal with this situation for as long as they have. And I guess if I'm a member of the public and I listen to what you just told me about the county being responsible for the jail, and we assume a lot of additional liabilities by entering into this agreement if Yankton County chooses not to pay. The question is, why did this become the city's problem, and why isn't it the county's problem to solve?
I'm not convinced it's not a problem in the county. I just don't necessarily see everything that happens on the eastern side of the hallway when you enter the public safety building. I understand the sheriff's deputies are having similar frustrations in their inability to arrest and book certain people in because they're bound by their own procedures. Having said that, I tried to put what pressure I could on the powers that be at the county level. I reached out to Sherry Loest and explained the problem to her. She reached out to Sheriff Lahakis, That didn't effectuate any change. I do want to modify what you said just a little bit, Mayor. You indicated that we're on the hook if the county chooses not to. That's not quite the way it's worded. It's if the court rules that the county is not legally responsible, only then. Hence, I described it as a kind of a recourse guarantor. You got to first go after those folks, and if that proves to be a dead end, only then can you come after the city. But I'm confident that the law on this issue is written clearly enough that the county will be on the hook. When I drafted this, I had to pacify Bonham County that we wouldn't stick them with the bag, because the law implies that if they're housing inmates for someone else, the county where they come from pays. So if we enter into agreement with them, the county where they come from doesn't pay, that's not fair to them, and then they don't want to house our folks. So that was the compromise that I had to build into this in order to get them to agree to be a backup for us. I wish there was a way I could twist their arm into just doing it because they're nice, but it's expensive to run a jail. So I get that, and quite frankly, $70 a day, considering all the babysitting that it takes to operate a jail 24 hours a day, and the salaries and the paperwork that goes with all of it, $70 a day seems to be like a fairly reasonable fee in my opinion. I was expecting it to be higher.
I have, this is Commissioner Mosier, a question on transportation. So as I read this, in here, so it's going to be a multifaceted question. One, I'm assuming we would haul prisoners over to Bonham County. How does that work does it take an officer off duty to haul them over? Does an additional officer have to come in to haul somebody over so that we keep current patrol on the streets? Two, is that then expense that the city is incurring to haul prisoners a billable cost to the county because it's a county jail that's not taking that? So I see that the county will pay Bonham to transport people over. Is the county then going to reimburse the city for the expense of us having to haul people over?
In the conversations that I've had with Chief Harris, I think we recognize that hauling the inmates, our prisoners, to Bonham County under this agreement, our initial delivery would be our expense. I did not see any statutory authority that covered transportation costs. However, once the individuals are in Bonham County, at that point they're subject to statutes and they have the obligation to deliver. Hence, there is the fee for the transportation of prisoners back to Yankton County. But that initial fee is going to be that initial mileage. I mean, we're paying the officers anyway for their time, but that's going to be on us. I conversed with Chief Harris and I think it was maybe Commander Foote. I don't think it was Todd, but we were talking about the time it would take to transport an individual. And I'm probably speaking out of school here, but I believe the notion was if that's what we got to do to deal with an individual, a half hour there, a half hour back, and a little bit of time for the booking, it's probably worth it rather than letting a person who should be arrested back out onto the street to cause more trouble. Is that a fair statement, Chief?
And just so the commission knows too, law enforcement salaries right now are reimbursable under the CARES Act. So we are getting reimbursed through December 31st. Now I realize that COVID-19 could go beyond that, but it wouldn't create as much of a budget strain as it would if we weren't under that CARES Act. And potentially the judge's order today, I think, will make the need for the agreement with Bonham a lot less, except if there were to be a health concern at our jail, then perhaps we would be utilizing it or she would determine to utilize it more than otherwise. But I'm hoping that it's going to be a rare occurrence now that we need to bring folks over there.
And is that a one-to-one situation to haul? So one officer to one prisoner, can we do it? And then, okay, so I'm getting a yes. And then two, just because I'm worried about safety, I mean, I think, and I'm sure you have a great plan for that. What happens if 9 a.m., somebody gets booked to Bonham and we haul them over there, and then at 10 a.m., somebody gets arrested, and I don't know how this all works. So I'm just, as I'm thinking about all these cars going, can we at any point haul 2 over to an officer? Is it going to take 1-to-1? Just curious.
Well, one of the things you are looking at some problems that we think may go away for the most part, because today's meeting went a long way to solve some of those problems. Misdemeanors in the past were not being booked into the jail, and that's one of the huge issues. We weren't able to remove the people from the location. They were just given a ticket and let go. The meeting today will allow us now to book every arrestee into that jail. There will be then maybe some very limited cases where we will have to transport to bond home. The other thing that's important about this agreement to us is if this jail does get closed down, we have to have a place to take anybody, felony or misdemeanor. So I don't think it's going to be as big an issue as it would have been prior to this meeting today. But yes, we will take 1 officer, because by the time that they go in the back of our squad car, and our squad cars are secured in the rear, it is fairly a safe environment. Very seldom probably would we be able to transport 2 at the same time, because then you have issues with prisoners causing trouble for themselves. We have a bad enough time with them dealing with just us. So there is some cost to it. But right now, for example, before this agreement, if we had a DUI and the jail refused it, we would have to make sure that person was below a .08. We would put him in our facility that's not a secured facility, and we'd have to watch him until they got below that .08 before we could release. We may lose an officer in the field for a number of hours just waiting for that person to be released. So we're going a long way in actually solving that problem from today. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No, thank you for clarifying that. I'm just making sure officers and public and everybody are safe, so I appreciate
Well,
that.
that was the whole concept behind us trying to do this, is because we felt there were certain environments out there or certain situations out there where we were actually responding to things and not able to deal with the prisoners, and was creating a hazard for our community. So that's why we were pushing hard to get this thing resolved.
Right, and I did say to City Manager Leon, when she'd sent us some of those examples, that I can see where it would be very frustrating, not only for the officers, but as a citizen of Yankton, to feel safe in my own community. So I would echo what Commissioner Schramm said and just say thank you to all the parties that took all the time to put this together, because I do think this is a great solution to a problem we inherited, as we have many during COVID. So thank you to all of you.
Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, but state statute has the county is responsible for running a jail facility in the county. So I understand why the city wants this agreement in place. Why is the judge not pushing the counties to have county-to-county relationships, not city-to-county relationship?
I indicated just a few minutes ago that in my meeting with the judge and I were reviewing the applicable statutes together, and she made the comment, and I think every county should have a similar agreement with each other, and I'm going to send an email to all of the First Circuit county sheriffs asking them to start having the conversations with each other for this purpose. That in a perfect situation, that's really how it should work. There should be this, and in fact, in an informal way, this is already the way it works in a lot of places. I had a conversation with the Bonham County State's Attorney, Lisa Rochadel, today, and she was saying, when these situations like this come up, it's interesting to see what the law actually says, because we have so many of these handshake deals between these small rural counties. We take Hutchinson County's overflows when they can't go to Davidson County because Hutchinson County doesn't run a jail. She said, I didn't know till this situation was going on that needs to be in writing, and now I do. So I think we're going to do a similar agreement with Hutchinson County that's in writing. So, it's already the way we think it should be happening. The laws are already on the books for the way it's supposed to work. But this cowboy, good old boy network that seems to work just fine most of the time functions the way it's supposed to, largely. It's just in this weird time of COVID, we see where the problems are at. So, in fact, I think there's been an unwritten relationship that's similar between Bonham County and Yankton. When I was working with Sheriff Maggs in Bonham County to identify what's that prisoner day price tag, before he had determined what that price was, he said, well, we just got to make sure it's not any less than what Yankton County charges us when we send our inmates over there, and he laughed a little bit. But that there is another example. They have already been informally using Yankton County, and it doesn't appear as though there is a written agreement that governs that relationship, even though the law says they're supposed to be. Because when everything works fine and everybody's being cooperative, you don't really need all of this structure. So this is just a way to try to bring structure the way the law is supposed to require it to do.
I think it's important, too, for the public to understand that. I mean, I think you all understand this because you've had some information before, but the bad guys, as Ross is calling them, they've figured this out. So you saw in some of those examples that, there was someone that would offend and get their ticket, and then we'd see them later that shift or the next shift or the next day. Sometimes removing them from a situation, removing them out of, or getting them completely sober, that can make all the difference for them, but also for our officers. So if our officers are dealing with an individual every shift, and this was happening with some individuals, then they can't deal with maybe somebody who really needs assistance as well, because we're limited at the number of officers we have out as well. And, we're not impermeable to getting sick either. So there might be a time when we have limited staff to draw from. So we really need to think about the type of community that we want to have and get people the help they need. And we know sometimes they need to be arrested, not because they're necessarily bad guys, but maybe they have a mental health crisis, or maybe they need some other kind of assistance, or they have an addiction, or all these types of reasons. But I think that it's important that we know, too, that if we're not dealing with these things day after day, night after night, we can then pay some attention to not just other people that may need our services, but also prevention. Because you can't do much education and prevention when you're dealing with the same, individual shift after shift after shift. And, I think that that's important as well. And I think also, to give efficacy to our police department, they need to feel like they have the tools to do their job the way they need to do them. And it's our job to move through discomfort with whatever entity we need to in order to give them those tools. And so that's, I think, what we're doing with this agreement, and by talking with the judge, and by, bringing this to you all as well. We don't run the jail, and we're not going to create the policies, but we're certainly going to make sure that the chief and his commanders can run their department the way we need to, and our officers can do the job the way they need to. So I think this will help us meet that goal, and that's a shared goal between us, Yankton County, Bonham County, and the whole state, really.
Did I understand right that the judge is the one that decides when a prisoner could be transported to Bonham?
If the county operating its jail has determined that its facility is overcrowded or unsafe, the judge orders where that individual goes. That's correct. But the judge is limited based on it's got to be based on a written agreement. So if there isn't a written agreement out there, the way the statute is technically written, a judge or a chief executive with the authority to imprison, that would also apply to sheriffs. Sheriffs can also send people elsewhere. But in this case, where it's our arrestees through the city of Yankton, and the Yankton County Jail, which operates independent from the city, says, we ain't taking your guy. Sorry, you got to find someplace else to go. That leaves us with no choice. So now the judge can say, well, pursuant to the city's agreement with Bonham County, I'm ordering that those folks can go over to Tyndall. So I hope that helps.
Does the judge, is that a standing understanding then, or does every single incident have to have the judge state for that pursuant to this agreement, I'm going to send that person to Bonham County? Because I would think if space is an issue, holding the person until the judge is available would be a problem.
The judge can do it either way. In fact, when I was in her office, she asked me my opinion on whether I thought we needed to do it as a standing order or on a case-by-case basis. And I told the judge, based on what you intend to do to change your standing order, meaning all misdemeanor arrests shall be booked through Yankton County with standing bond terms for those misdemeanors, it will be so few and far between that we need to use it. On a case-by-case basis should be just fine. Because if you go back from when these procedures or limitations began through now, the reason of we can't take that individual because we're full only came up, I think, a handful of times. Maybe 3 to 5 times. I'm pulling a number out of the sky. It wasn't very many. So enough that we can deal with it on a case-by-case basis. And then in each instance, the court will enter an order that says, pursuant to the city's agreement with Bonham County, that individual will go to Tyndall.
The only other question I would have, and this relates to transportation, should a Yankton inmate who's held in Bonham be released in Bonham, is there any requirement to return them to Yankton, or are they on their own from Bonham County?
They're still going to be subject to the jurisdiction of the Yankton County courts. So the judge here will be entering, once an individual is booked, you get bond set. There's a lot of different ways for bond to be set, but that governs the circumstances in which you're released. So for pretty much every misdemeanor, it will be you are released on what they call an unsecured bond. You don't have to pay anything, but if you fail to show up for court, you have to pay a bond amount that you forfeit equal to the amount of your fine. But it's governed by the local judge, even though the individual is in Bonham County. It's not a situation where they go to Bonham and that's where they stay, and if we forget about them, well, they're in Bonham County. It's not our problem anymore. The agreement specifically provides that if Yankton County, particularly the Yankton County Jail, wants that individual back, Bonham County has to get him back. So they're still Yankton County prisoners as far as the court system is concerned. It's just overflow.
Is it a one-way street going out to Bonham? The agreement that we've got is just between Yankton transporting inmates to Bonham, not in return, correct?
Yep, and we would have no jurisdiction to do the other direction because we don't operate the jail anymore. I think we gave up that power and responsibility in, 2006? So since that period of time, we have no control or operation over the jail. So we could do this with other places, but we have there's nothing for us to give in exchange.
So we would have to be an agreement with Yankton County.
Right, and quite frankly, I think if Yankton County was to enter a similar agreement with Bonham County, I think that would basically leave our agreement sort of irrelevant, and the judge would probably never use it as an option or a play in her playbook, if you will, because she would have the one directly between the counties, which makes more sense.
Sure.
So I hope that's...
It would be nice if that would be the way that it would work.
Oh, yeah, that would be
And then this could
ideal.
just be a null point.
Yep, it's just not something that we have any control over.
And Ross, remind me, when do we expect the Bonham County Commission to take up this issue if we approve it tonight?
Next week, Tuesday.
Are there any more questions from the commission? I don't hear anything, so we don't have anyone in the audience here to ask questions. Brad, is there anyone on YouTube who has questions?
There are no questions or comments on YouTube at this time.
Okay. Is there anything else we wanted to discuss at this time?
You know, one of the things that I want to tell you guys that I really appreciate from a police department standpoint is our city manager and our city attorney helped us move this forward. We'd had 2 previous meetings where the police department was meeting with the sheriff and the judges, and we've gained some ground over time, but we're unable to move off that bubble until we got the other administrators involved. So we truly appreciate their efforts here because I think we made major inroads this meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, this is an uncomfortable situation for all of us. So I do appreciate the leadership that's been displayed and the attempts to bridge the gaps here. And today we made a lot of progress, so that's good for everyone. If there's nothing else, I would ask for a motion to adjourn until 7 p.m. when we'll begin our regular session.
So moved. Mosier.
Schraub, second.
We have a motion and a second. Al, roll call, please.
And this is roll call on the motion to adjourn the work session. Weber.
Weber votes aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, aye.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunig, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor, are you with us? We'll move to Mosier.
Mosier, aye.
Mosier is aye. Schramm.
Schraub, aye.
Schramm is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. Motion to adjourn passes 8-0.
All right, we are adjourned until 7 p.m.